shocking. The royal guard screamed at Queen Camilla inside Balmoral after she tried to claim the late Queen's iconic Range Rover for her own son. What followed shook the entire royal household. Forged papers, hidden letters, and a truth buried deep within the Queen's final wishes. You won't believe what was found inside that car. Stay till the end, smash like, and subscribe for more royal truth bombs. The hum of early autumn settled over Balmoral like a secret the wind refused to tell. The estate carried the kind of silence that held memory in its breath, soft, deep, and sacred. Sergeant Lachlan Reic knew this silence well. He had guarded these grounds through 4 winters and 3 summers, through coronations and funerals alike. The late Queen's Range Rover had rested untouched all that time, its engine cold, its presence unspoken. It was not just a vehicle. It was part of her. Her scent still lingered on the seats, her maps folded neatly in the glove box, her handwritten notes tucked inside the visor. To Reic, it was not machinery, it was memory. That morning began like any other. He stood at his post by the motor court, clipboard in hand, cross-checking vehicle logs for the upcoming inspection. The mountain air was sharp and clean. Birds stirred on the tree line. Then it came, a low, resonant growl from the garage. Not the sound of a maintenance van or a staff car. This was older, heavier, royal. Reic's head snapped up. He knew that sound the way a soldier knows the rhythm of his heartbeat. The Range Rover, the Queen's personal car. He walked briskly toward the garage, boots crunching over gravel, each step picking up pace. The closer he got, the clearer the noise became, the classic purr of a perfectly maintained V8 engine. His chest tightened. No vehicle had clearance to move that car. None. He reached the entrance just as the doors rolled open and sunlight spilled over the black paint, revealing the license plate that every guard recognized instantly. RGL1. The Queen's initials. Her personal mark. Behind the wheel sat a young man with a smirk too casual for royal grounds. Thomas Parker Bowles, Camilla's son. Leaning against the trailer ramp stood Camilla herself, dressed elegantly, giving quiet instructions to the staff. Reic stopped at the threshold. "Ma'am," he began carefully, "this vehicle is restricted. It is under heritage custody. No transfer has been logged." Camilla turned slowly, her tone poised, her eyes unreadable. "Sergeant Reic, thank you for your concern. My son will be taking it to London for preservation. The late Queen's wishes are being honored." Reic blinked. "With respect, ma'am, there are no such orders. The Range Rover is part of the Royal Memorial exhibit. It cannot be removed without Crown clearance." Thomas laughed from the driver's seat. "Do you really think anyone cares about your paperwork? My mother has every right to decide what happens to this car. The Queen adored her." Reic's jaw tightened. "Sir, this vehicle is royal property. Until authorization is verified, no one drives it." Camilla's patience thinned. "Sergeant, step aside. You are not to question royal instruction." He took a slow breath, the kind that steadied a soldier before battle. "My oath is to the Crown, ma'am. And until His Majesty or the Prince authorizes the movement, this vehicle stays here." Camilla's lips curved into a thin, cold smile. "You are overstepping your position." The engine revved again, louder now. Thomas waved a folded sheet of paper. "Here's your authorization," he mocked. "Signed by royal authority." Reic stepped forward, took the paper, and scanned it. His stomach turned. The signature was a digital copy of King Charles's seal, slightly misaligned, lacking the embossed watermark every official letter carried. "A forgery." He looked up, his voice lower but sharper. "This is false documentation." Thomas's smirk vanished. "Are you accusing the Queen Consort's office of forgery?" "I am accusing no one," Reic said evenly. "But this car does not move an inch until I confirm this signature." Camilla's tone darkened. "Sergeant, this is a family matter. Do not embarrass yourself." Something inside Reic snapped, not out of anger but out of duty long suppressed by protocol. His voice, normally calm and precise, rose with rare conviction. "This is not a family matter, ma'am. This is the late Queen's legacy. You cannot drive her memory away like cargo." The garage fell silent. Even the staff froze. For a moment, Camilla looked genuinely stunned. No one spoke to her that way, not in public, and certainly not a guard. Thomas opened his mouth, but Reic's voice cut through him again. "Step out of that car." Thomas hesitated, then glanced at his mother. Camilla's jaw tightened, but she gave no signal. Reic stepped closer, pointing to the royal crest embroidered near the steering column. That crest was placed there by Her Majesty herself after her final trip to Balmoral. She said this car would stay here, untouched, as long as these walls stand. The words echoed like a vow between generations. Slowly, Thomas switched off the engine. The silence returned, heavier now, filled with something sacred. Camilla drew a deep breath, her voice steady but laced with frost. "You have made a scene, Sergeant. I will be reporting this." Reic met her gaze without flinching. "Then report the truth, ma'am. That the royal guard protected what the Queen left behind." She turned sharply and walked out, her heels striking the gravel like a declaration of war. Thomas followed, muttering under his breath, while Reic stood alone beside the still Range Rover. The faint warmth of the engine faded slowly, like a memory exhaling its last breath. He placed his hand gently on the hood and whispered, "You are safe, ma'am. No one will drive you away." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, because when power is challenged by principle, silence never lasts long. The morning mist lingered over Balmoral like a shroud, heavy and unbroken. News of the confrontation had spread faster than the wind across the moors. By sunrise, every corridor inside the estate carried whispers, some in awe, others in disbelief. A royal guard had raised his voice at the Queen Consort. It had not happened in decades. Sergeant Lachlan Reic reported for duty as usual, uniform pressed, gloves spotless. But he could feel the eyes following him. In the guards' quarters, silence replaced greetings. In the hallways, staff shifted aside as he passed, pretending to busy themselves. He did not care for their murmurs. His conscience was clean. Yet the quiet punishment of isolation was harder to bear than any public reprimand. By mid-morning, he was summoned to the small conference room beside the Royal Motor Court. Captain Ainsley, his superior, stood waiting, arms crossed, the gravity of his rank filling the air. "Sergeant Reic," he began slowly, "do you understand what you have done?" Reic stood tall. "I enforced the protocol, sir." "You confronted Her Majesty the Queen Consort in public," Ainsley replied. "You raised your voice at a member of the royal family. Do you realize how serious this is?" "Yes, sir," Reic said firmly. But the order to move the Range Rover was false. The authorization bore a forged royal seal. Ainsley exhaled deeply, rubbing his temple. "Even if that were true, it was not your decision to challenge it openly. You should have escalated it quietly. Now the matter is under investigation, and you are under review." "I followed my oath," Reic said, "to protect the Crown's property and honor." Ainsley studied him for a moment. "And what if your honor costs you your position?" Reic's reply was steady. "Then I will lose a title, not my integrity." The captain sighed, perhaps with reluctant respect, and dismissed him. Outside, Balmoral felt colder. The wind carried the scent of pine and tension. Reic walked back toward the garage, unsure why his steps led him there again. Perhaps he needed to see the car, to remind himself why he had spoken out. The door creaked open, revealing the black Range Rover still parked beneath the dim light. Dust motes drifted in the air like small ghosts of memory. He approached slowly, brushing his fingers across the hood. The metal was cool now, lifeless. He opened the driver's door gently, careful not to disturb the seat where the late Queen had once sat. Her wool scarf still hung folded on the backrest. He glanced toward the glove compartment. The latch looked slightly misaligned, as if opened recently. Curiosity and reverence battled inside him. He reached forward, pressed the latch, and the compartment clicked open. Inside lay a small leather-bound notebook, its corners softened by time. The cover bore an embossed crest, Elizabeth R. For a long moment, he simply stared. The Queen's private journal. Hands trembling, he turned the first page. Written in her familiar cursive, the first line read, "If this book is found, it belongs to those who guard in silence. There are truths that must wait for courage to wake them." Reic's throat tightened. He read further, finding dated entries, simple notes at first, weather reports, visits, reminders. But deeper within the pages, her tone changed. She wrote of her disappointment in what she called the erosion of principle beneath privilege. She mentioned conversations with senior courtiers who pushed to shift control of certain assets, including the Range Rover. One passage stood out in particular. They tell me it is sentimental to preserve it here, but some things should remain where the heart remembers them best. I trust my God will ensure it stays. Reic felt his pulse quicken. The Queen had anticipated this. She had known her possessions, her symbols, would one day be claimed by others seeking control rather than remembrance. This car was not just history, it was her final statement of faith in those who still believed in duty. He heard footsteps behind him. Quickly he closed the notebook and turned. Captain Ainsley stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I thought I might find you here," he said quietly. "What have you found?" Reic hesitated. He held up the journal. "Proof, sir. The Queen left instructions. This vehicle was never to be moved. She entrusted it to her guard." Ainsley's eyes widened slightly, then softened. "Do you understand what this means, Sergeant? If this comes to light, it will not only vindicate you, it will challenge every order issued since her passing." Reic nodded. "Then it must come to light." The captain looked toward the car, the weight of the crown visible even on his tired face. "This is bigger than both of us, Reic. You are dealing with people who fear the truth more than scandal." "I am not afraid of either," Reic said. Ainsley regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then guard it well. For now, keep that journal safe. No one must know until I speak with the prince." Reic watched as his superior left, the door closing softly behind him. He looked again at the journal in his hand and whispered to the silence. "You trusted the right man, ma'am." Outside, the clouds began to darken, the wind turning restless. It carried with it the faint echo of engines from the royal convoy arriving from London. Camilla had returned, and she would not come quietly this time, because in a palace built on appearances, nothing threatened power more than a soldier carrying the truth. A cold rain swept over Balmoral as the Crown's motorcade cut through the gates. Inside, tension thickened the air. It was not the kind born of open conflict, but of quiet power, of things that should never be said aloud. Word of Sergeant Lachlan Reic's defiance had reached London within hours. Now the Queen Consort herself had returned, and she was not alone. Alongside her came 2 senior courtiers and the palace press secretary, the sort of company that turned discipline into spectacle. Reic stood outside the great hall, rain clinging to his cap brim. He had been ordered to wait for internal review. He felt no fear, only the steady ache of inevitability. He had expected punishment. What he did not expect was that the truth in the glove box would already be working its quiet way through the castle. Inside the hall, Captain Ainsley stood beside Prince William, who had arrived unannounced the night before. Ainsley had given him the late Queen's notebook. William read through the entries in silence, his fingers tightening around each page. When he finished, he closed the cover slowly, as though sealing a heartbeat. "She knew," he whispered. "She trusted the guard more than her own court." The captain nodded. "She left him that trust, sir, and now it has cost him everything." William's jaw set. "Not if I can help it." Moments later, Camilla entered, her composure sharpened by fury. "This entire situation is intolerable," she declared. "A servant raised his voice at me, defied my instruction, and now the press whispers about forged signatures. I will not have chaos attached to the crown." William met her gaze evenly. "No one is questioning the crown, ma'am. We are questioning the truth." Her eyes narrowed. "Truth? You mean gossip carried by a guard who reads too much into his duty?" Ainsley stepped forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, the sergeant found the late Queen's personal journal inside that vehicle. It confirms that the Range Rover was meant to remain here. The authorizations to remove it were falsified." Camilla froze, surprise flashing before pride returned to mask it. "Show me this so-called journal." William placed it on the table between them. Her handwriting, her seal. "I had it verified." Camilla's color faded slightly. "Then you mean to disgrace your own family over an old car?" "It is not about a car," William said quietly. "It is about her word." Silence settled like stone. Outside the hall, Reic could hear the muted voices but not the words. He stood motionless, the faint echo of thunder rolling beyond the windows. When the doors opened at last, Captain Ainsley beckoned him in. Reic saluted sharply. "Your Majesty." "Your Royal Highness." William gestured for him to stand easy. Sergeant Reic, we have reviewed the matter. You acted beyond instruction, but not beyond duty. The Queen's own record supports your judgment. You will not be dismissed. Camilla's expression hardened. He humiliated the Crown in public. William's reply was steady. He upheld it in private. There is a difference. Reic said nothing. He simply bowed, gratitude hidden behind discipline. Camilla turned away, her voice low. Do as you wish. But you are setting a precedent. Guards lecturing queens. She swept from the room, her advisors trailing behind like shadows. When the door closed, William exhaled. You may not realize it yet, Sergeant, but you have forced us to remember what this place is meant to stand for. Respect, sir, Reic answered. Nothing more. William looked down at the notebook once more. No, integrity. He handed it to Reic. Keep it safe until I decide how to release its contents. The world should see that her legacy was guarded, not exploited. Reic accepted it carefully, aware of its weight, more than paper. It was proof that honor still had a pulse inside these walls. That night, alone in the guards' quarters, he opened the final pages. A small envelope had been pressed between them, unsealed. Inside was a folded note written in the same graceful hand. To whoever defends what I leave behind, there will come a day when silence will tempt you more than truth. Resist it. The Crown survives through honesty, not fear. He stared at those lines until the words blurred. Outside, lightning flickered across the hills, followed by a slow roll of thunder. Somewhere deep in the palace, voices argued about damage control, statements, and headlines. But Reic heard only the rain, and the faint hum of an engine he swore would never leave these grounds again. For the first time in weeks, he felt peace. The Queen had spoken from beyond, and her words had been heard. Yet he also knew this was not the end. Power never forgives being defied. It merely waits for a quieter moment to strike back. The rain did not stop for 3 days. It rolled down the stone walls of Balmoral like time washing away old lies. The estate that once symbolized quiet dignity now felt like a fortress under siege. Cameras had begun gathering at the outer gates, their lenses hungry for cracks in the royal facade. And somewhere in those broadcasts, one name was whispered again and again, Sergeant Lachlan Reic. He had never spoken to the press, yet his story traveled through every channel. The guard who defied the Queen Consort. Some called him a patriot, others a rebel. But within the palace he was something more dangerous, a reminder that truth, once spoken, could not be taken back. By the 4th morning, Captain Ainsley entered his quarters holding a folded newspaper. You are everywhere, he said quietly. The front page showed a blurred photo of Reic standing near the Range Rover, face half hidden by shadow. The headline read, Royal Scandal Deepens. Queen's Guard Challenges Command Over Iconic Vehicle. Reic said nothing. His eyes traced the words once, then dropped. The press always finds a way to turn duty into drama. Ainsley sat across from him, lowering his voice. The palace wants containment. They plan to release an official statement this evening. Camilla's office will call it a misunderstanding. You will be placed on leave. Leave? Reic's tone was calm, but his jaw tightened. After everything? It is politics, Ainsley said. They need silence until this blows over. Reic leaned back, staring at the window where raindrops chased each other down the glass. Silence is exactly what Her Majesty warned against. Ainsley's expression softened. I know, but battles are not always won by speaking louder, Sergeant. Sometimes they are won by enduring. Reic nodded slowly, though every instinct in him rebelled. He had not risked his career for temporary peace. He had defended a principle, the idea that legacy was not property, and respect could not be rewritten. Later that day, the palace issued its official statement. It played on every channel by sunset. There was a minor administrative error regarding the transfer of a historic vehicle. The matter has been resolved internally with full cooperation of all parties, but the public did not believe it. Comments flooded social media, questions filled news panels, and voices demanded transparency. How could the royal family misplace a car tied to the late Queen's memory? Why had a decorated guard risked his career to stop it? The internet began calling him the Lion of Balmoral. As dusk settled, Prince William arrived quietly at Reic's temporary lodging. He dismissed the staff and entered alone, carrying the late Queen's leather-bound notebook under his arm. "They are trying to smother this," he said plainly. "But I have read every word. And now I cannot stay silent," Reic stood. "Then you mean to tell them?" William opened the notebook and placed it on the table. "Not the press. The people. My grandmother wrote about duty, humility, and honesty. If I hide her words now, I betray them." Reic watched the prince's eyes, steady, resolved, much like hers. "You will face backlash, sir. You know that." William nodded. "So will you. But truth is worth its cost." That night, while most of the palace slept, William recorded a message that would air the next morning across national networks. His voice was calm, deliberate, and human. "A misunderstanding has led to speculation regarding one of my grandmother's personal vehicles. Let me be clear, the Royal Guard acted honorably. The late Queen left instructions for certain possessions to remain at Balmoral as part of her legacy. Her words will soon be made public. It is time we remember that honor does not belong to titles, but to actions." When the broadcast aired, silence fell across Britain. Then came applause, small, scattered at first, but growing louder across living rooms and social feeds. For the first time in years, the monarchy was not defended by press releases or ceremony. It was defended by truth. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Camilla watched the broadcast alone. The screen's glow reflected in her eyes, anger mixed with something like reflection. "He defied me," she murmured. "And yet, the people loved him for it." Thomas, standing beside her, muttered, "You should have let him take the car quietly." She turned sharply. "That car represented more than steel. It represented loyalty that I could not control." That night, when the rain finally stopped, Reic walked once more through the Balmoral garage. The Range Rover gleamed faintly beneath the overhead lights, clean and still. He placed a hand on the hood again, as he had done that first day. The air felt lighter now. Not victorious, but peaceful. He looked toward the mountains beyond the windows. The clouds had begun to part, revealing streaks of silver moonlight. Somewhere out there, the Queen's memory lingered, alive not in monuments or jewels, but in the courage of those who refused to forget her truth. As Reic turned to leave, he noticed something new, a small brass plate freshly mounted near the garage entrance. It bore a single inscription: "In honor of those who guard not the crown, but the conscience of it." He smiled faintly, understanding at once that this was not William's doing. It was the Queen's last lesson finding its place, engraved, unspoken, eternal. But he also knew the storm had only shifted, not ended. Power would wait. Politics would return. Yet for now, the truth had won one quiet night. A soft dawn crept over Balmoral, washing the wet stone in shades of gold and ash. For the first time in weeks, the air felt calm. The scandal had begun to settle, yet calm inside the palace was never peace. It was the quiet moment before power decided how to strike back. Sergeant Lachlan Reic stood by the garden gates, watching the mist lift from the hills. He had been reinstated for now, though without full duty. Temporary observation post, they called it. A polite way of saying keep your head down until the noise fades. He did not mind. After all, he had never served for recognition. He served for truth, and that truth had now begun to ripple far beyond him. The broadcast from Prince William had changed everything. Newspapers had called it a moment of moral renewal. Polls showed rising public support for transparency within the royal system, but not everyone was pleased. By mid-morning, Captain Ainsley arrived at the gates, his tone low and cautious. "Reic, the council is restless. There are those who believe you have become too visible, too symbolic. They are planning a reassignment outside of the main royal estates." Reic looked at him steadily. "You mean exile?" "An elegant one," Ainsley replied. "An advisory post at Sandringham. Away from cameras, away from influence." Reic's eyes turned toward the palace towers. "If they wish to hide me, they forget one thing, sir. Truth travels faster than any transfer order." Ainsley gave a faint smile. "That is what worries them most." Before he could reply, a courier appeared, breathless, carrying a sealed envelope marked with the royal crest. "Immediate delivery for Sergeant Reic," he announced. Ainsley frowned. From which office? The courier hesitated. No office, sir. It came through the private archive vault. They said it was part of the Queen's personal record, recently discovered. Reic accepted it carefully. The seal looked old, wax slightly cracked, the edges browned with age. Inside lay a folded letter written in the same graceful hand he had seen in the notebook. The heading read simply, "To the one who guarded the Range Rover, his breath caught." The letter was from the late Queen herself. He unfolded it slowly and read, "There will come a time when my belongings are claimed not for remembrance but for display. If a faithful heart should ever stand against that, know this, you carry my blessing, not my burden. Integrity may invite punishment, but history is kinder to the honest than the obedient. Let them take titles, let them claim authority, but let one soldier guard the truth. It will be enough." The word struck him with the force of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She had foreseen all of this. Every deceit, every false command, every silence, and she had left her approval for the man who would one day say no. Ainsley read over his shoulder, awe softening his voice. "She knew you would come." Reic folded the letter carefully, his voice steady. "This belongs to the people now, not to me." By noon, Prince William summoned him to the private library. The letter lay on the desk between them. William read it once, then again, his eyes misting slightly. "She wrote this after her last Balmoral summer," he said quietly. "She must have hidden it knowing what might come." Reic stood at attention. "Her words speak more clearly than any command I could give, sir." William nodded. "Then they will be heard. I will have the letter included in the official Royal Archive exhibition. The world deserves to see what kind of monarch she truly was, and what kind of man stood for her legacy." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds completely. The gardens glimmered, the hills shone wet and bright, and for the first time in months, Balmoral felt alive again. But even as hope returned, darker plans moved in the corridors below. Behind closed doors, certain courtiers whispered to the Queen Consort's private secretary. "He must be removed before he becomes legend," one said. "The monarchy cannot be guarded by men who believe they know better than their masters." Camilla listened silently, her expression unreadable. When they finished, she spoke only one line. "Do nothing yet. The people love him. But time has a way of turning loyalty into fatigue." She was right. The public had found a hero in the guard who defied her, but public memory was fickle. If she could not silence him through power, she would wait for indifference to do it instead. That evening, Reic sat beneath the same oak tree where the Queen once took her morning tea. The letter rested in his pocket, its weight more precious than any medal. He thought of all the battles fought behind polite smiles, of the truth buried beneath crowns. He had faced them and survived. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. He whispered to the fading light, "You trusted your guard, ma'am." And your guard kept his word. Far off, the last rays of light fell upon the Range Rover, parked exactly where it belonged, untouched, unmoved, eternal. The following spring arrived quietly at Balmoral, carrying a softness that the past winter had lacked. The meadows bloomed again, the river thawed, and yet the castle's walls still seemed to hum with echoes of the truth that had changed everything. What began with an engine's growl had become something far larger, a reckoning that had reached even the most guarded hearts of the monarchy. Sergeant Lachlan Reic walked the courtyard in silence. His uniform no longer bore the insignia of ordinary duty. Across his chest gleamed a new badge, Royal Integrity Division, established under Prince William's command. The Crown had created an entirely new branch dedicated to ensuring transparency in royal holdings, archives, and legacies. It was the Queen's vision reborn, built from one guard's defiance, where scandal once whispered, reform now spoke. Visitors to the Balmoral Heritage Wing found, in a glass display beside the Queen's Range Rover, the late Queen's handwritten letter. Integrity may invite punishment, but history is kinder to the honest than the obedient. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "In honor of Sergeant Lachlan Reic, who remembered that loyalty is nothing without truth." The first time Reic saw the display, his throat tightened. He stood before it for a long while, remembering the cold morning when he had placed his hand on that same car, unsure if his career, or his purpose, would survive the day. Now it stood gleaming beneath soft light, untouched, preserved exactly as Her Majesty had left it. The scarf still lay folded over the seat, the scent faint but unmistakable, lavender and history. Prince William joined him that morning, his expression calm but proud. "You realize what you have done," he said quietly. "You have changed how we define service. The monarchy owes you more than it can repay." Reic smiled faintly. "Then let it repay her instead, sir, by never forgetting what she stood for." William nodded. "It will. From now on, every officer will take an oath, not just to protect the crown, but to protect its conscience." A moment of quiet stretched between them, a moment that felt like legacy itself. In the weeks that followed, journalists began referring to Reic as the Queen's last guard. His story spread beyond Britain, discussed in parliaments, classrooms, and even in military academies where honor was more than a word on a badge. People found in him something the modern world had nearly lost: the courage to say no when everyone else bowed, yet Reic himself sought no praise. He spent his days training new recruits in the integrity division, reminding them that loyalty without honesty was just obedience in disguise. "You are here to serve truth," he often told them, "not comfort. Remember that, and you will never be replaced by fear." Months later, during the first anniversary memorial of the Queen's passing, the royal family gathered once more at Balmoral. It was a private ceremony free from cameras or speeches. As they stood by the gardens, William handed Reic a small velvet box. "Her final commendation," he said softly. Inside lay a single medal, silver, shaped like a shield, engraved with 3 words: "For truth served." Reic bowed deeply. "I was only doing my duty." William's reply was quiet but firm. "No, Sergeant. You reminded us what duty truly means." When the others left, Reic lingered near the gardens. The wind carried the same pine-scented air he remembered from that first morning. He glanced toward the Range Rover parked nearby, glinting under the soft light of dusk. It no longer symbolized scandal or defiance. It symbolized faith kept alive. He whispered to the fading horizon, "Your guard kept watch, ma'am, always." A robin landed on the car's hood just then, chirping once before taking flight. Reic smiled, a small, knowing smile that spoke of peace at last. As he walked away, his reflection glimmered faintly in the vehicle's polished surface. Not as a soldier, not as a servant, but as the man who had stood between silence and truth and chosen truth. Because in the end, history never remembers those who obey. It remembers those who protect what is right. And long after the crowns have changed and the flags have faded, the story of the guard who screamed for the Queen's honor would live on, not as rebellion, but as respect. If you believe that truth and courage still matter, smash that like button. Drop a comment about what loyalty means to you, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories from bench flicks that remind us, integrity is the true crown of the human spirit.